Hey guys, welcome to this week of Ute Dash. Today, I am joined by Cody of Cougar Dash. Cody, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to watch WSU play after the heartbreak that was last week and the even worse heartbreak that was the week before. So I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, y'all have been kicked. You guys were down after USC, and then you looked like
hmm
you're gonna get up, and the Pac-12 was like,
Yeah.
no, stay down.
Yeah.
It,
It not fun. Not fun. Not
oh
the way
yeah,
you want it to happen.
but nothing this season has happened the way that we want it to happen. Let's be
Nope.
real. So, we're just gonna jump into it. So, we're gonna have a really big running back matchup this week, with Max Borghi and Ty Jordan. So, Cody, I'm gonna ask you, which defense is gonna have a harder time stopping this rush game
hmm
come
Yeah.
11:30 tomorrow?
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of this hinges on Max Borghi's availability. He looked like he was going to play against Cal, but we don't know what capacity that was going to be in. We don't know if he was going to get 100% of his normal usage, or if they were just going to ease him into it. Nick Rolovich declined to comment on that. He said it was top secret. So that leads to me thinking that they're going to use him fully, but we never know. But I do want to point out the wording of your little subtext here. It's kind of taking a shot here because Max Borghi had 817 rushing yards, but let's talk about the total yards because the total yards was 1,400 because he played in the air raid, which didn't like to run the ball a lot. So if you're just reading that underneath, let's get the full story
Hey,
here
I'm just
because
grabbing my stats from
I
ESPN,
know,
but
I know. I'm just saying this is a new offense that likes to actually run the ball because Max Borghi did not run the ball very much last year. He got the ball thrown to a bunch, like tied for second in the conference in receptions. And so what we would have saw this year was him get a really heavy dose of actually, getting some carries. But we've seen Deion McIntyre instead, and he's looked really good. He's been a top, I've been saying probably top 6 back if you look at kind of the numbers and the stats. It's hard to look at because everybody's played different games. But I think if you're getting a fully healthy Max Borghi back, I think those two together are probably the best 1-2 punch at running back in this conference. And I think that's what puts them over the edge in terms of giving trouble to Utah's rush defense because both rush defenses are really good. They're top 2 in the Pac-12 right now. And so I'm leaning towards Utah having more trouble just because they've got 2 guys they've got to worry about, and WSU does really have to worry just about Ty Jordan, who's looked really good. But I think 2 is greater than 1 in this scenario.
I will say my favorite Max Borghi moment last year was when Julian Blackman tackled him in an open field tackle on the 2-yard line, right when you guys were about to win, which that's my favorite moment. I know that's probably a sore moment for you, but I just love that moment because here on Ute Dash, we are Julian Blackman stands.
hmm
But I do think that the Utah defensive line is going to have their hands full. This is probably going to be
hmm
one of their harder tests they've had this season. But look at what they did last week against Colorado. Like they had, I think, 110 yards, if I'm remembering correctly, like total.
hmm
Like that's really good considering what their running back had been doing the week, like previous
Yeah.
weeks and stuff. But to be fair, he'd played like Arizona and like
Yeah.
some other schools that don't have defenses. But I do think that I think Utah's going to struggle a little bit, but I'm not completely worried about it.
hmm
I will just say that Ty Jordan is elusive. He is like
Yeah.
5'7". He is a tiny dude, and he is fast. And even though 2 of our running backs, our backup running backs in Jordan Wilmore and Devin Brumfield, both put their name in the portal this week, that's kind of like an ouch moment for Utah. But you still have Mekhi Bernard, who's that backup who has been playing. He had some reps against Colorado, and he looked good. And the thing is with I don't know about if it's the same with McIntosh and Borghi, but
hmm
Jordan and Bernard are 2 vastly different types of backs for Utah. Ty's tiny, so he can get out there and he's elusive and he's fast. Like when he gets
hmm
going, when he gets those
Yeah.
wheels going, he's gone. Like that
Oh,
touchdown, that 66-yarder
yeah.
against Colorado, chef's kiss. Beautiful. That was so fun to watch. And he's been compared to Zach Moss a lot. And Zach Moss is the greatest running back Utah's ever had. He's now the school's leading rush. And you see a lot of the same traits in Ty that you see in Zach. Ty was able to bounce off of his offensive line and get out and turn something that should have been a loss of 1 or a loss of 2 into a positive 3 or 4 yards. he is a tiny bowling ball, and I don't know how Washington State's going to handle that.
Mm-hmm. I would say that he's the type of running back that gives WSU their defense trouble, but frankly, that's just about every running back and just about every player on, an opposing offense. They've struggled at times, but they've played Jamar Jefferson, they've played Oregon, who has a great stable. They looked really good against USC, only, giving 5 rushing yards, but, I think that's more of, not to say WSU's rush defense is bad, but they're not hold the team to 5 rushing yards good, because clearly, USC could just coast for 3 quarters. But,
also, USC has that air raid offense that you guys used to have.
Oh, yeah. Very familiar with that. And so, I do think that they're going to have some trouble stopping Jordan. He'll probably get over 100 yards rushing if they are committing to establishing that run, especially because WSU, what they get burnt by the most is the explosive plays. They've done a really good job of just stopping it up the middle and not letting, them get first downs by running, just right up the gut, which they allowed last year, but they still have, given up 20-yard plus runs in the big plays. And what you brought up about kind of the complementary backs that Utah has, obviously we haven't got to see that play out for WSU, but what we do know from the seasons that we've seen is that Borghi is the best pass catching back in the conference, and quite arguably, maybe even in the country, is a top one for that. So we know they have different skill sets because McIntosh has shown some really strong running. I believe he's a little taller. He runs with some more power. But Borghi can do those things too. He's smaller, but he's not, 5'7". He's not Ty Jordan small. He can still run up the middle too. So, it'll be interesting to see how they're used, because we've seen McIntosh get basically every single carry. And I don't believe that'll be the same with Borghi because they're so talented. But I just think, the ability to use those guys interchangeably, to, use them at the same time, to do some things is going to be really interesting. And, I don't know what Utah's offensive line is like. I assume it's pretty good, but I know WSU's offensive line is really good. And that's one of the reasons why the run game has been so successful, is because, they're creating it on the offensive line. Utah obviously has a great defensive line, but, if they have the advantage in the O line, then I think that also might give them an advantage in the run game.
Yeah, Utah's offensive line is young, but they have been able to create holes, which is really good, which is what has led to Ty having such a breakout season, is they're able to create these holes. And then we also have some stellar tight ends who are fantastic at blocking in Cole Fotheringham, Brant Keithy, and Dalton Kincaid. All 3 of them, fantastic blockers. They're able to clear stuff off on that edge so that it is easier if he has to bump out to the outside and get off there. Plus, I know wide receivers usually aren't the best at blocking, but our wide receivers are pretty good at getting that too. So it's it's a team effort for Utah. But yeah, I know you said that Borghi is pretty good at catching the ball outside the back in the backfield. Ty's the same way. I think it was the USC game, if I remember correctly, but he led the team in receiving yards. It was not a lot, but he still had it, and he's proven himself to be a really good check down option for Bentley when Bentley has been having issues with everything else. But Ty's a good check down because the kid has the speed, and if he has the blockers in front of him, no one's catching him.
No, definitely
no one's catching him. He's a former track athlete. He's gone. You give that kid 2 yards and he's turning it into 9 or 10.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird to think, if you'd have told me a year ago I'd be sitting here and talking about WSU's run game, I would have said you're crazy, because this is a team that wouldn't even run the ball when they were winning at the end of the game. So it's weird to be sitting here and talking about that, but we're definitely going to see a game that's not only because of the weather and because of some inexperience issues, whatever, at quarterback. These are 2 run first teams now, as weird as that it's a safe for WSU. So that's really where it's going to be decided. And I agree that both of these teams are probably going to put up some great numbers, and it could very well come down to who performs better on the ground could win this game.
Yeah, Utah's always been a rush first kind of team, but me and Cole talked about it preseason that we thought with Bentley or Cam Rising, who got hurt against USC, whichever one of them was under center, this was going to be more of a pass first offense. But we don't fully know if that was going to be happening because, again, Rising got hurt in the first game, and
Mhm.
Bentley has been inconsistent for a good chunk of the season. We don't know if this was what this Utah team was supposed to look like. But
Yeah.
so we're going to jump on over to our second topic of the day. What has been good and what has been bad? Your co-host Ryan is in the chat, and he said, Utes going down tomorrow. Borgie will carry WSU to the promised land. Incorrect. But Cody, do you want to tell me what was good and what's been bad for you guys so far?
I do agree that the Utes are going down, obviously, as you know, my fandom suggests, but I don't think it's going to be all on Borgie because you know we don't know if he's fully healthy. But what I do think it'll be on in the group that I think needs to show up just like every other game and has shown up is the offensive line. You know, I've alluded to it. I've kind of talked about it, and it's really the main reason why they've been able to establish the run and become, you know, for you know what it's worth, a run first team. Is because the offensive line has been, you know, awesome. Before they played USC, they had only given up 2 sacks, and I believe they were both on linebacker blitzes. You know, they're not getting beat on the pass rush, and one of them was against the Oregon, you know, defensive line that's very talented. And then USC, that they just brought the house over and over again because their secondary could match up and play man. So this offensive line has done really good at, one, protecting a quarterback, and 2, you know, letting them run the ball on the ground because, you know, their running back isn't getting stopped in the backfield because there's a defensive lineman that just shed a block. So, you know, the offensive line, which a lot of people, you know, they might watch and they'd say the running backs or they would say the receivers. But, you know, to really evaluate this team, it's been the offensive line. And then, you know, what's been bad on the other side of the ball, it's been the secondary. The defense has been improved, but still not the greatest. But the secondary has not stopped anybody. You know, they let Tristan Gebbia throw on them in the second half, which is kind of embarrassing to see what he's done against some other teams. And it's been explosive plays. You know, they've given up really big plays in the passing game, sometimes in the running game, but, you know, it's just not what you want to see a team do. You know, the run defense has been improved, but that secondary, you know, it's young, it's inexperienced, but it's not where it needs to be, you know, for this team to compete. And we saw Keaton just tear them apart already.
Yeah, for sure. That's young secondaries. You're talking to someone who's been living with a young secondary for this entire season as well, which actually leads into my good. Is the growth from game to game for this team. Against USC, you could tell that this was their first game. They looked bad. They probably put in a full quarter of game. Maybe I'm being generous with saying a full quarter, because there was moments that were good and there was moments that were god awful. But then game 2, it was not week 2, it was more like week 4. Week 2 against Washington, you know, we put together a full first half.
But only one. I was rooting for Utah so much. Like, I had to have been the biggest non-Utah fan in that moment, and you guys let me down.
I'm sorry. I can't control this young secondary, but at least we put in a full half. That's so much better than what we did against USC. And then against Oregon State, we put in, Cole says it's 3 quarters. I say it's 3.5 quarters against Oregon State. The fourth quarter was kind of sus and kind of iffy with like what was going on. But then last week against Colorado, they put in a full 60 minutes. So they're fine. I understand it's taken them like in the entire season to get to this point.
But that's normal to take 4 games in a 13-game season. Like, that's not out of the ordinary.
That's normal. And especially when you are playing, we were replacing 9 out of our 11 starters on defense.
Yeah.
That's huge. Majority of our secondary is freshmen or sophomores. Like, for them to take 4 games, like I'm saying that's great because honestly, there was points of this season where I didn't think we were going to win. I thought that we were going to just go 0-for the entire season. But the growth from game to game has been so good for this team. Like, it's so impressive to see that they are being able to learn on the fly, and they're able to take the things they're learning against each team and put it towards the next game. The other thing that's been good for me is Ty Jordan. Wow. I love him. Me and Cole are so high on him right now. Like, he is so good. He was someone that I didn't really expect to see a lot of this season because Witt had said preseason, like, yeah, we have 4 backs that are going to be splitting the load this year. And so I was like, okay, we'll probably see a majority of Devin Brumfield and Jordan Wilmore, and then we'll get sprinklings of Mackay and Ty. And no, it was like right out the gun. It was like, Ty Jordan, here he is. And, it probably made 2 of our running backs transfer, but that's neither here nor there. And Ty Jordan has been such a good thing in this offense when there hasn't been a lot of other good things to do because of my bad. My bad is Jake Bentley's inconsistency. If you would have told me that an SEC quarterback who was a grad transfer to Utah has had 5 or 6 interceptions in only 4 games, I would have said you're insane. Because I understand playing in the SEC is a lot different than playing in the Pac-12, but still, it's live game experience against some of the best players in the country playing in the SEC. So for him to come out and just lay an egg has not been good. I will say he has gotten better from like I understand the USC game was like he was thrown into it. He wasn't expected to be the starter, but like by the second half, you probably know you're going to be playing the rest of the game, so you should probably settle down. And he did. There were some moments where he settled down and he looked good. Okay, fantastic. Washington, he looked a little bit better. Oregon State, he looked a little bit better again. Last week was nearly his best game as a Ute. But he had that god-awful interception where he overthrew Brian Thompson by about 3 or 4 yards, and then he claimed that his hand got hit as he was throwing the ball. When you watch the replay, his pinky gets like grazed, and he's like, "Oh, I got hit." That's not good. That is clearly the bad for this Utah team right now. Like, our defense has been playing pretty solid, and which is something that I'm very surprised about given the turnover we had. And the offenses look good, and when they get everyone involved, they look good, and it's a good team. But until Bentley can find some consistency, I don't know what to say about this Utah offense. Like, he has been the glaring error for this team this year.
And I thought when Utah got Bentley, I thought that was a really good get. Like, a guy who's been proven to not be great, but be really solid in the SEC, like, should be fine. And that's, a guy you'd want to be able to rely on in a weird season, a guy that has experience. So it's really surprising that he has struggled, which is, nice to hear as a WSU fan, because, we're coming off of Keaton Slovis having, his probably the easiest game of his life against this WSU secondary. So that's nice. And your growth is really kind of worrying me, because if I'm tracking you right, they've gone from 1 good quarter to 2 to 3 to 4. So it sounds like they're going to play 5 good quarters, which I don't like, because I would like to see one of the earlier games where they played bad, because I feel like, other than Oregon State, but we got Oregon State on a decent week. I feel like we've got every team on their best week, which is frustrating because we got USC was like, oh, maybe we'll lose to Arizona. Like, I don't know. And then they come out and actually look good against WSU. So that was frustrating. So I'm hoping to see more of the bad and to see Jake Bentley struggle, which would be nice, because, the WSU defense needs a little motivation to do something, because they have not looked great recently.
I will say, actually, I lost my train of thought on that one. But, it's going to be – I'm excited for this game. I think it's going to be pretty good. This Utah secondary, I think – I wouldn't be surprised if Andy Ludwig comes out of the gates testing that Washington State secondary, since they are and have given up those big plays, especially if you have someone like Brant Keithy or Britton Covey or Brian Thompson out there. Like, those are 3 really good wide receivers that are deep threats. I would be surprised about that.
Isn't Bentley unable to hit Keithy with a pass?
Yes and no. Okay, there's probably been 14 points, maybe 21 if I'm thinking correctly. 21 points that have been left on the field because Bentley has overthrown Keithy. Yeah. But last week looked a lot better. I will say that.
I was going to say, if they could just leave him open, not have to worry about him, that would be nice. Let Bentley overthrow him, and then guard some of the other players he can actually throw to. But so that's not a very good development for that WSU secondary. I guess they'll have to guard a tight end, which tight end, WSU is not familiar with the tight end. We haven't had one on our roster in a decade, probably.
I will say that also I think this game's going to be different for Utah, because they announced yesterday or today that family and friends are going to be allowed in the stands for Utah, and they're also allowing Washington State family and friends to come into the stands too. And I think this is going to be the first time that these kids have played with a crowd, and I think that's going to be something that's really impactful for not only Utah but also for Washington State. Like, I know it was weird playing against USC and not having the must there and not having the 15,000 fans that we have, or the 50,000. I can't remember. There's a lot of fans up in there, but it was weird to not have that dynamic of having those fans, because this team really feeds off of it.
Yeah,
But
I agree.
We're going to jump onto our final topic of the day, but before I do that, my co-host Cole threw a question in the chat. He said, "Who has the better mustache, Cody or Gardner Minshew?"
It's Gardner Minshew. You can't compete with Gardner Minshew. One day I would love to be on that level, but I mean, when you're called like the freaking stash, like when your stash is iconic on a campus, like that's GOAT status right there.
That is. And then Brandon in the chat says, "One flight tracker is showing the flight is canceled from Pullman to Salt Lake City." That's not
we're
good.
not going to talk about this, okay? Until I hear for certain. I've said before that this is a season of hope, and I like to have hope. So
yeah, well, Utah just released their uniform combo for tomorrow, so I'm feeling very hopeful, because
we've seen a game get canceled 90 minutes before kickoff. So
hey, Cody, we're not putting that in the atmosphere. We're not putting that mojo out there.
I'm sorry.
This time. Don't put that out there.
Okay, let's talk about the game that's going to happen.
We're going to talk about the game that's going to happen. So let's start with some keys to victory. So my keys to victory for Utah, the first one is going to be keep the ball safe, okay? We didn't put the ball on the ground versus Oregon State, and we came out victorious. We turned the ball over multiple times versus USC, and we lost. Same with Washington. We turned over the ball a couple times. It was not good. Yesterday, yes, we turned the ball over against Colorado, and it's neither here nor there, but we still came out on top. If Utah can keep the and force those turnovers, I don't think Washington State's going to be able to come back, because this Utah secondary, as young as they are, they have had some good interceptions this year. Huge. Vontae Davis has 2. Jeremiah Vaughn has 1. There's a couple of guys out here that are newer faces to this program who have come up with interceptions and have been big. Again, the Utah defensive line forcing fumbles. Nephi Sewell forced 1. Max Tupai has forced 1. Huatui Pututau has forced 1. They can keep the ball safe themselves and force Washington State to turn over the ball. They're done. My second key to victory is distribute the ball. If we can keep Washington State on their toes and not be like, this is who we have to circle and focus on, I don't know how they're going to be able to stop us. Because like I've said earlier, you have 3 solid tight ends, one of which, Fotheringham, who full-on hurdled a man last week. You have 3 tight ends that are fantastic. You have a plethora of really good wide receivers led by Britton Covey, Brian Thompson, and Solo Enos. You have these guys. You also have Ty Jordan, who can catch it out of the backfield. You same with Mekhi Bernard. Don't make them circle one guy. Make them have to focus on everyone. And then my third key to victory is going to be to establish this run game early. If they can get it going it's going to open up the pass game, and then it's lights out. They're done.
All right. And so I'm calling kind of an audible on this first one. I'm keeping it the same, but I'm changing a little bit. I originally had to take the pressure off Delora with the running game. That's still true. This team is a run-first team, and they need to have that in order to be successful, because this is not a team that's going to drop back and pass it every single time anymore like it was here before. But I'm also adding in that just taking pressure off him in general, and that comes down to winning in the slot. I know Utah has a good secondary historically, and it's been good this year, but if Travell Harris and Renard Bell can win matchups in the slot, because that's really where Delore's throwing it to almost every time. The outside receivers have not been anything for this team. So, if you can lock down those two, you basically lock down WCU's passing offense. So if those guys can get open, can give him easy throws, that takes pressure off him as well, to not be having to force things. And then, I'm not just going the opposite of yours, but I said make Bentley make mistakes, because luckily for him, this WCU defense does not force turnovers. I think they have 3, and they came in 1 quarter against Oregon, and one of them was like a botched handoff. So, this is not a defense that has made really good plays in terms of turnovers. And so I'm not even talking about necessarily turnovers, because it could just be incompletions, get pressure on him, make him make a bad throw. Even that will do. But if they can get a few turnovers, I think that's huge because this team hasn't gotten them at all, which is not good. And then the last thing I said is win up front on defense. I think on the offense, they have a really good chance of winning up front just because that offensive line is so good. But on the opposite side, the defensive line has looked good, has looked bad. It's been a mixed bag. But if they can win up front on defense, meaning generating pressure, which they didn't do to Keaton Slovis, but they had done before, and also, preventing big runs in the running game, then I think that'll be huge too. Because if Ty Jordan can just get whatever he wants, then there's no stopping him. Yeah, and then if Bentley isn't forced to, make plays, if he can sit back if he gets a clean pocket, he should be able to hit somebody, especially with
You would think so.
Well, that's true.
You would think so.
More times than not, he should be able to, especially with a secondary that isn't great. So, if the defensive line can really step up, they've got a lot of young guys, on that group now with some injuries and some opt-outs. But, that'll be the key. I mean, I think almost every game this year will have been decided by the trenches for WSU. So I believe that will continue.
In a surprising turn of events, I have Jake Bentley getting my game ball for this week. I think this is the game where he finally looks good. I would have given him the game ball against Colorado if he wouldn't have had that terrible interception. I think this is the game. This is finally the game that Bentley is going to come in. He's going to be settled down. He's going to be ready to go. And I think also, I'm not saying that the pressure is not on for Utah anymore since they're not going bowling. I think he's going to relax. There's nothing riding on this game for Utah. There is, but there isn't. There is because you want to finish the season off with a win, but there isn't because you don't need to win this game to go to a bowl game. You guys have already bought your flight tickets and you're gone. You're going home after this game. You're going home to see your family for Christmas. So I think that he's going to settle down. He's going to be ready to go and he's going to be good. And I think a lot of it is going to be being back at home and playing at Rice Eccles because there's just something about playing at Rice Eccles that makes this team jive more and feel good. And I think that me and Cole every single week call out one player that we think is going to have a big game. And I think that Bentley is going to have a huge game with Samson Nakua. I think this is the game that Samson's going to be the number one guy. He had a touchdown game versus USC, but then he got hurt. So it's he's been not 100% the rest of the season. And I think this is a game that he finally gets Nakua involved because Nakua is fantastic in the slot. I love him. I love his size. I love his speed. And I think Bentley and him are going to be perfect. So I'm giving my game ball to Jake Bentley. I hope he doesn't let me down for once this season. Well,
can I give mine to Jake Bentley? Can I hope that he does? And then, because I think that would be huge for us. But I was flip-flopping. I thought offense, maybe give it to Travell Harris. I think he can make some plays. He's really explosive. But I went on defense. I'm giving it to Jahad Woods, who is WSU's middle linebacker, who had a great season last year and he's been good this year, but it kind of started out slow. But, if Jahad Woods has a game, that means, one, that they stop the run because he's the guy that is going to stop the run. Obviously, the defensive line as a whole will do a lot of work, but if he's racking up tackles, that means he's bringing Ty Jordan down, before he can break free. And then, also, the tight ends, I assume he'll, playing some zone, probably match up against some tight ends, maybe man up against them. But I just think for the defense to have a good game, it's going to come down to the leader of the defense, and that's Jahad Woods. And so if he's able to put together one of his best games, he's gotten a sack already, he's gotten a lot of tackles for losses, then I think that means that the defense as a whole is just functioning and they're not losing this game.
Cool. Yeah. So to wrap it up, Cody, what's your score prediction?
I said 27-24. I believe this, neither team is going to get in a shootout. Neither team wants to get in a shootout. It's going to be a run game, but I do think that there's going to be enough points scored to make it interesting enough. And I think it's close because, I think talent level, these teams look about, even. There's a lot of other factors you have to take into account with this weird season. But, I think close, low-scoring game. I like 27-24.
I have 24-21 Utah. It's going to be cold. It's going to be cold tomorrow. And I know that's not an issue that affects Washington State. If we were playing Arizona, I'd be like, this is the biggest issue. But it's snowing currently here in Salt Lake. It's going to be cold. It's going to be not fun. And it's going to be it's going to be a good game is what I'm going to say. I
Mhm.
think it's not going to be high scoring because I don't think either offense is going to have that power. Like if this was Washington
No.
State's team last year with the air raid, I would have
Oh,
said
yeah.
it's going to be like in the 30s.
Mhm.
But since this is such a rush heavy team, it takes a little bit longer sometimes to move the ball down the field, and it's just a mess. So
Mhm.
I'm going 24-21 Utah, and that's
Yeah.
that. Hopefully the Utes will end with the
I
W.
didn't clarify that I was picking WSU to win. I hope it was implied. I said after they got 2 weeks of games canceled, I said I'm never picking against this team again because it's a season of hope. So 27-24 WSU. So yeah, just wanted to throw that out there. Don't want.
I assumed it was 20.
Yeah.
I assumed it was 27-24 Utah. So
No, I would never do that. I would never do that. 27-24. Write it down. Take WSU on the spread. 10.5 points. Utah's not covering that because I said that they're going to cover that. That's the effect I have on this team. But that's my advice.
So that's all the time we have for today on Ute Dash. Before we head out, we just want to remind you guys that we are writing columns now through Sports Pack 12. You can follow them on Twitter at Sports Pack 12 and also check out their website at Sports Pack 12 or their Twitter. Yeah, which they're at Sports Pack 12.
Just Google Sports Pack 12, you'll find them.
You'll find them. You'll find their Twitter. You'll find their website. While you're on your computer, make sure you check us out on our website, dashsports.tv. Also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at @sportstv. Cody, you guys want to plug your show? When is Cougar Dash back?
Well, it's usually on Thursdays, and that is Christmas Eve next week. So it will not be on Thursday. It may be earlier in the week, but if they lose, I don't think we'll want to rehash this. But so stay posted because we won't be on Christmas Eve, but we may slide in earlier in the week.
Cole and I will be back though on Sunday to talk about this game, talk about the rest of the season, talk about what's going on with Utah football. As always, here on Ute Dash, we sign out with a lovely "Go Utes."
Go Cougs.
No, we don't say that on this channel.
Well, we do now.
Go Utes, guys. See you later.